Hello everybody, my name is Chance Paladin and welcome to my channel, and if you're here about my books and you want my books explained to you, then I'm going to try to do that as fast as possible. The first thing you should know is that they're both in print and Kindle, and the Kindle is chopped up into tinier versions. So if you're into the Kindle stuff, I'll explain that first. So the first one is PNW Affliction #1. It's called Recycled, and that is how the story all starts. And basically our hero starts and it's nighttime and he goes to do things, and basically the collapse happens. So if most people say where do I start? And if you don't want to throw a lot of money into it, this one I think is like $1 or something like that. So if you have a Kindle and if you have a Kindle and you want to get started and very affordable, that is where you can get started. Also, they're all on Kindle Unlimited, so if you're into Kindle Unlimited, then there you go. So for folks who are into print and want to get started, the first 8 are in print, and it's just called PNW Affliction Volume 1. And I did that because printing out each of the individual teeny tiny stories, I actually tried that back before Amazon got purchased the book printer that I was using, and it used to be really affordable, and I would have actually made a decent amount of money, but Amazon was like, no, we need to control everything, and then they bought them out, and I think they actually even replaced who was doing the printing and stuff, and it's very sad. So I had to kind of rebrand and pivot a little bit and find a book cover that everybody liked, and ended up taking the first 8 stories for Kindle and putting them in the print version here, which is the first one. And then the second one, which is called Barless Prison, where our hero ends up in a prison and has to figure out what to do to get out of the prison. Book 3, where our hero has to go check on this place called Combo Plaza and make sure that they're doing okay, because they need to go check on them because they agreed to go check on them. Book number 4, where our hero finds a ship adrift, and this is all like apocalypse fiction, and so they want to go check the ship out because all of a sudden a ghost ship shows up. And the book in print retails for around 20, I think, or 25, somewhere in there. Although what's really weird is on Amazon right now, again, like at the time of me recording this, the first book was only like $6, which I don't understand. I think they're running some kind of deal. So this PNW Affliction Volume 1 is only like $6 right now, which is insane, because I think that's literally like at cost. But I think they usually retail for like 20 to 25 for paperback. If you want them hardback, they're more. The Kindles, though, they're only like $3 a piece. I priced the Kindles really, really, really low. You can read like half the series for almost nothing, to be honest, if you just want it in Kindle or Kindle Unlimited, which is they're all free. So yeah. So number 5, our hero has to leave where they were hiding out for the apocalypse and go to the mountains, and things happen. Number 6, and by the way, so far all of these are in PNW Affliction #1 for print. So in 6, Storm Before the Calm, folks were asking a lot of questions about, well, those are all in rural areas. What's going on in the cities all this time? So this is the first book where we leave what our hero is doing and we go find out what's going on in the city of Seattle, which may or may not just actually be Seattle, but that's okay. And Seattle, because I chose my own names for the towns, the cities. It's a city. So this is the first kind of little mini introduction to what's going on in the city, the night of the collapse, because by the time I wrote number 6, almost all of the interest seemed to specifically be around the night of the collapse and cities. So I'm like, okay, I will write about a big city and the night of the collapse. So there you go. Number 7, in the collapse, they start running out of fuel. And so again, these I think are like $3 or $4 a piece for the Kindles. They start running out of fuel, and so they need to figure out how what they're going to do, because the collapse has been going on for so long that they're running out of fuel. And number 8, which wraps up the first part of the series, similar to number 6, we depart. Oh, because in number 7, our hero is trying to figure out what to do with the fuel to go find some, and then in book number 8 is we're leaving our hero again to find out what's going on during the summer and the winter. So it's the summer before the collapse, and then it is the winter during the collapse. And this wraps up the first story arc, which is kind of why these are like the first 8. And you could argue that kind of like book number 6 doesn't quite have to do with anything with the rest, but I feel like, I don't know, it was a neat time to go figure out some other things that were going on, instead of just focusing on our hero the whole time. So that is PNW Affliction, Volume 1, and then the first 8 stories that are in Volume 1. Now, Volume 2... Bonk. Is books 9 through 14. And again, I think this retails for like 20 to 25 in print. And Jem did the art for this one. And I did all these drawings because, well, there's reasons for it. I'll talk to you about it later. But I want to go through the books first, so, and try to focus. So, PNW Affliction Volume 2 covers books 9 through 14. So, number 9, again, I know these book covers are like really blah, but the book cover types signify like the chunks that I wrote the books through. Anyway, blah blah blah. So, number 9 is about a virus and the AntiVirus that's trying to stop the virus. And I don't want to say more than that because there's a lot of spoilers, and I feel like if I explain any part about these and you end up reading the whole thing, I think this series is way more fun if you just go through the whole thing absolutely blind with no preconceptions, because it's kind of like an adventure. So let's see, that's book number 9. Okay, book number 10, I know, another crappy book cover, Rail and Eggs. This is about a character that is trying to escape the flood. A flood that happens maybe around in the middle of the timeline, because these books take place over the course of like 10 years or something, so... The area of PNW, well, I should have just up front explained. PNW, for those who don't know, is the Pacific Northwest, which is the place, the wonderful place that we live. So there's a flood in the Pacific Northwest, and the character has to escape the flood. And there's a rail and eggs involved. Number 11, which is Nines and DroneGirl, is about a gal named Nines and a gal named DroneGirl. And this is another kind of like Night of the Collapse book, because I don't know, like, people kept asking, tell us more and more about the Night of the Collapse. And so they're both two interesting, unique characters, and then they may or may not find each other and team up and become a duo team that go on lots of adventures. And number 12, Rats and Locusts, is about a character that is rat-oriented, or maybe even two characters that are rat-oriented, rat-related stories, and they intertwine with a locust-related story, sort of a deal. And I'm keeping it vague and ambiguous because I want you to actually read the books and not just go, that sounds stupid, because I don't think they're stupid. I think they're kind of cool. I think they're unique and different. And I want you to read them and be pleasantly surprised. Okay, 13 of the Crappy Book Cover series is Third Portions, which is the first book about what's happening, like, geopolitically in, like, the California area, because I realized I've been writing this series and didn't really explain. I kind of like hinted and alluded to, but I wanted to talk about what's going on in California. So this story revolves around a couple of different characters that are trying to survive in California, which collapsed at a different point in time, technically earlier than the collapse in the Pacific Northwest. So it's a little bit of a time jump back in time. And then Six Sands, which is, I kind of wanted to have a story about what was going on in the Utah/Idaho/Montana area. So it's like a fictional spot somewhere around in there. And it's some more like Night of the Collapse kind of stuff. But then it branches off into the Midwest-ish, in like the weeks after the collapse, the PNW collapse. Okay, so that is the first 14 books. So now we get to the standalones, starting with book 15, and these are the, like, the city trilogy, sort of. So, oh, whoops. All right, I cleaned up the screen a little bit, so this was easier. So the next three books, which confusingly are called 15, 16, and 17, because of how they were originally ordered on Kindle before I had to figure out some kind of economical way to translate them to print so it wasn't just ripping everybody off. So the first three of what I call the city series are 15, which is called the Duet. This is about a 2.5 year block of time, or maybe even 3.5 year block of time, over what happens in Sealth, from the start of the collapse all the way to 2.5 years through. So if you're wondering, like, only what's happening in Sealth for, like, I don't know, at least 3 years, this book explains it. And these covers are all from either, oh man, I know I was going to forget their names, but they're both on the free images website. Pexels and Pixabay. So The first 8 I did. The next 9 through 13 were kind of just sort of very, very, very plain. No, 9 through 14 were just very, very plain designs. And then 15, 16, 17, the city series, I either got these images off Pixabay or Pexels and used them for my books. So yeah, 15 is everything, like 3 years that happens in Sealth. 16, called Hell Hath No Fury, is everything that takes place in Portlandia, which is what I call Portland in my book series. And then 17, which is called Coast to Jungle, and that is everything that takes place in a fictional city called Coastoria, which may or may not actually just be Astoria. Again, it's all Pacific Northwest. It's PNW. It's Pacific Northwest. That's what most of this. That's where most of this takes place for now. So those are like the 3. I would call those like the city trilogy. And again, like 1 or 2 years in Portlandia, maybe. No. Maybe a couple weeks. Maybe a couple weeks in Portlandia. Again, like the night of the collapse, and like Portlandia, then a couple weeks. And then same thing with Coastoria. It's kind of like maybe the first couple weeks of the collapse in Coastoria. And if anyone gets this far in reading these books, I think they find them some of the most enjoyable, but also some of the most kind of intense, because this city trilogy is when I kind of ramped things up to more of like an adult, mature oriented level. Because if you're wondering like what these are rated, it's really hard to rate books, and everyone's maturity level's different. But up until book 15, it isn't anything that you wouldn't have seen on cable news or on the news or anything, just in terms of violence. But 15, 16, and 17 definitely up the adult levels to what you'd see on, HBO or Cinemax or whatever. Alright, this is where it gets a little confusing. So, 18, Finality of Causality. 19, The End of the Beginning. Which both of these, again, this artwork is either from Pixabay or Pexels. I can't remember. These are all short stories. Some of them lead into side stories, and some of them don't. There are tons and tons of short stories in these, and so it would be very difficult to explain anything that happens in them, except suffice it to say that 18 is kind of all over the place and explores kind of like some shorter themes that didn't really fit into long form, so the stories are like 3,000 to 5,000 words, because that's just kind of the form that they were fitting in. 19, why it's called The End of the Beginning, is that kind of starts to wrap up the themes of the original, like a lot of the original intent of the series starts to get wrapped up in 19. So number 20, New Beginnings, is where I sort of tried. They're more short stories again, but I was trying to set the groundwork for how the end of PNW Affliction was going to go and phase out the collapse of the Pacific Northwest and start to focus on the collapse of the Midwest, called Heartland. So this is kind of the collapse starting to take place in the Midwest. And it's a lot more short stories, but it's kind of wrapping up all the loose ends and scooting everything over. This is more wonderful art by Jem, and 21, which is, this is art by me. I did that. And this is kind of part 1 of the end of the collapse in the PNW, the collapse in the Pacific Northwest. So if not, yeah, I know. I'm recording this live in my chat. My chat always gives me a hard time over the book cover for book 21. I am quite proud of that book cover. So, for my potato cell phone camera. So yeah, basically, if, 19 was like the end of the beginning, so like kind of 19, 20, and 21 were really setting up the end, which is book 22, the end of the PNW. So, cover that up so they don't tease me. No, I'm joking. So this is the end of the Pacific Northwest. So the collapse, it is the book ends to the story of, specifically to the PNW collapsing. So that is a guy reading a book that says Epoch on it. So that is the main series in a nutshell, and I know it's kind of all over the place, and I'm not 100% sure how to like rebrand it all into something that makes sense right now, but I at least want to explain it in case it ends up being a long time before I can rebrand this into something that makes sense. But wait, there's more. So before I forget, again, thanks to chat for reminding me, Jem did this book cover, and some of it is from either Pixabay or the other one. Dang it, I already forgot the name of it again. Pixabay and the other one. Sorry. But she did a ton of photo manipulation on this one, and it looks awesome. Oh, and the prices of these, yeah, starting with book 415, they do get a little bit more expensive just because they're probably twice the size of the other books. And yeah, she did a great job. So, and then if you, there's like a lot of hidden, like secret squirrel, like hidden messages and all this for anyone someday, if anyone ever actually gives a crap, which I doubt. But basically, like, this is the beginning where he's like, crap, the lights are out. What's going on here? And then the end where the Epoch book is on fire, which is a very important part of the story that I won't spoil. There's tons and tons and tons of overlapping themes and I don't want to spoil any of it because that would just ruin the fun. So now we're going to get into a couple of the spin-offs, which are teased in the short stories. And the first one is Ghost Company. And how Ghost Company came to be is I hadn't done a military story. Like, my books have like a little bit of military stuff in them, but like military always seems to be like the easy button, because you can just like throw them at anything and they'll just destroy anything, because our army is the best army in the world and they can do anything. And so it took me a long time to build up what would be like a really, really fitting military story and to like work it into the narrative. And so Ghost Company is my first attempt at that. And alright, this book is from, actually this was my very first commission, or my very first paid for kind of like stock photo-ish sort of kind of, and I actually got this one from Can Stock Photo, and it was quite affordable, and then I threw, you know, the name of it on there and everything. So quite proud of myself for that. So this is Ghost Company. This is my first military book, and someday I plan on doing a spin-off if I can ever make this my full-time job, so I can really focus on it. Alright, so this is the second spin-off. This is called The Wacky Adventures of Fanny and Flo Love Everyone. And this is the second spin-off, so I hadn't done any stories about what happens anywhere else in the world, except I think I did like one teeny tiny short story about another part of the world. But I wanted to do like kind of like a fully fledged out story of what happens somewhere else in the world. So basically there's a character, and they have to escape their area when it collapses over there. And when it collapses in the other part of the world. And and Jem did the cover for this one. This is actually a story Jem and I had Chat's going nuts again. You guys are great. This book is a fan favorite because I incorporated a ton of my friends from the chat into the story. You guys are awesome. So, in fact, I think most of the people in my chat right now are actually in this book as characters. So, yep. The character has to escape where they're from and make it across the ocean. And Jem did this book cover, and it is amazing and perfect. And both yep, both Ghost Company and Wacky Adventures of Fanny and Flo Love Everyone is they have short intro stories in the other short story books. And these are both in print only, but they have kind of teasers in the other books before they became spin-offs, when they both kind of became fan favorites and ended up being spin-offs. So a secret, one of the many secret code Easter egg things is Wacky Adventures of Fanny and Flo Love Everyone is waffle. So it's waffle. So hooray for cleverness. And so that's the end of the fiction. That's the end of the fiction series. So after all that, you know, it wasn't really resonating with anybody, unfortunately. It was resonating with a couple people, but not many. And so I was going to write, I knew I needed to write something that was nonfiction. And so I started with I was going to write a recipe book. I just wanted, I don't know, I just had it in my heart that I needed to write something that was nonfiction. That's all I knew. And the only thing that came to mind was a cookbook. And so I found all my old recipes. They were kind of like just joke. They were kind of like joke recipes. So I put all those in there, and I'm like, how many words do I want this to be? And so I was asking around, how many words does a recipe book need? How many recipes do you need in a recipe book? And I was about halfway there, so I started adding a couple more, and they were just kind of like joke recipes. But I don't know, I just had this weird drive, like that I needed to write this. So once I put almost enough recipes in there, I had like 15. I was like, okay, I'll break these up into breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So and snacks. So I did that. And then I was like, well, shoot, I can't really have a recipe book if I don't explain how to check and see if the food is okay. Right? So I went to check and see how the food was okay. And then it's like, well, okay, well, shoot, how are you going to cook? How are you going to cook all of this? And so I put how to cook all of it. And it's like, well, how do you make sure the stove isn't going to blow up in your face? And then it's like, what happens if you don't have a stove and you actually just have a campfire? And it's like, well, how do you make sure your campsite's safe? And then what happens if you have to be camping and it's cold, Or, how do you be safe with the campfire? And so eventually I just started calling it my bunker book, because I was like, well, shoot, what happens if you just find a bunker and don't know what to do with anything inside at all? And that just kind of developed into this book. And Jum did the book cover for this one too. And I think some of the art came from either Pixabay or Pexels, and then she did a ton of photo manipulation on it to make it the awesome sauce book cover that it is now. And it ended up doing better than my fiction series. But I think that's because it seems like as we go through these like multiple collapses in real life, because since I've started, we've been through 2 really big collapses now, right? We had like the 2016 set of collapses, which I was writing the first part of my book series through, and then the big double whammy 2020 collapse, where we had the Rona shutdowns and massive civil unrest at the same time. And now we're heading into a third one now. So it seems like as I write these, like people's appetites change for what kind of information they want to digest, and so people seem to be digging the nonfiction right now. So that's what this one's about. And I approached it. There's a million survival books out there. Most of them are garbage because a celebrity had a bunch of ghostwriters write them, and they don't really take any stock in investment over what they write. And they make it look like them, but it's actually other people. And so I thought, well, what if I just gathered, the 10, 15 years of all the information and everything that I've done, because I had to reteach myself everything, and shout out all the YouTubers that helped me get there, and the tons and tons of training that I've done with all these different like community preparedness, where you donate your time and they get you trained up, and it's like community service, sort of community volunteer stuff, and just kind of threw it all and figure out what worked and what didn't work, and it all went in this book from like the point of view of if I had to explain something to somebody brand new, which is like every day, because the worse things get, the more and more people want to learn. And so that's what I do. And if people end up going back and reading my fiction series, then great. But the problem is, like, I had written the whole PNW Affliction series with people, with me having in mind them taking the books and putting the books in their bunkers. So that way my series would live on someday when all of our history is destroyed, and people could read this and they could go, oh wow, is this what everything was like? Or like, oh wow, like everything could have turned out this way, and it didn't. Because a lot of the stuff in my books is very predictive, Like, some people have called it like predictive fiction instead of like apocalypse fiction, because people keep making this stupid joke, everything's already this bad. It's like, just shut up. It's not funny, it's not helpful. And so it's like, well, gee, this is really more just like predictive fiction than and I wanted people to put these in their bunkers. And actually, to be honest, I know, because I've seen the pictures of it, quite a few people did buy my fiction series and stick it in their bunker and shared those photos with me, and I think that's freaking awesome and hilarious. And it's exactly what I wanted. But when I was done with the main series, I thought, there's a lot of people that actually just wanted all the information without digging through a fiction series. And like, what if they don't have as much time? Wouldn't it just make more sense to actually just make a bunker book? But I didn't want to call it bunker book, even though that is what I call it. I call it my bunker book. But after several days, thank you. After several days of trying to name the book, I couldn't really think of what to call it, because the book isn't really about what a bunker is. It's the fact that people stock up tons and tons of gear and do not know what to do with any of it. And then if somebody else finds the gear, which I was watching this YouTuber, I think it was Survival Prepper Outdoors. I always screw his name up. And he called those people like walking loot drops, and I just died. So damn funny. And so that's what these bunkers are, right? They're kind of like a big loot drop waiting to happen, because people don't get the tactics, training, and mindset, So there's going to be bunkers everywhere. People, and I was watching YouTube videos, and YouTubers are finding bunkers on the properties that they buy, like left and right. And since writing this book, I've talked to several more people who find bunkers on their property. There's kind of like 3 generations of bunkers, right? There's kind of the current modern one, and there's like the late 90s, early kind of 2000s bunker, and then there's like, the 60s era Cold War bunkers. And although I've heard of some people finding World War II bunkers also, which is really crazy. And no matter which type of bunker you find, you got to know what to do with it, and there's a good chance that a huge chunk of the stuff in there is actually useful. So I was like, man, like, I'll just try to include it all and do my best. There's a bunch of stuff I don't know, like, I'm still not really good at snares. But, that's just because I need to sit down and practice. And so there isn't anything about snares. I haven't, cleaned an animal. I haven't dressed an animal, and I'm not really good at fishing and not really good at how to clean a fish. I can sort of clean a chicken. Yeah, Y2K through 2012. Yeah, 2012 was weird because it was like right in the middle of all like the late 90s Y2K stuff. And the funny thing is, I guess it's story time because I'm sort of done. So I was working, for Y2K, I was working kind of in a place that had a video store. Everyone said, oh, nothing happened Y2K, nothing happened Y2K. Well, it would have, but a lot of people were working on their software. So I can tell you Y2K could have actually easily been the end of the world if everyone hadn't updated their software. Because everybody was 100 years late on their video rentals. So try to extrapolate out how bad that would have been if everyone hadn't updated their software. In 2012, I was working on an accounting system, and everybody was like, why are we even working on this accounting? Why are we even trying to do our end of year accounting cycle? This wasn't me. These were the accountants. I was an auditor. And they're like, why are we even bothering trying to do end of year if the world's going to end? I'm like, man, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, if you don't want to like do it, if you don't want to like close the books out, like, I don't care. It's all going to be here next year. Or it's not going to be here next year and it's not going to matter. It's pretty funny, actually. So that's my Y2K story and my 2012 story. I don't put a lot of stories in the bunker book, but I think when I write the hardbound, which I've already tried to officially start the hardbound once. I'm going to try to officially start the hardbound again very soon. I think I'm going to include a lot more anecdotal stories. I'm just going to label them as such. The paperback does have a lot of quotes, a lot of motivating quotes in it, I think. But yep, I've been talking for a bit. And oh, you guys are being mean to me now. I've been talking for a bit, and so my chat says bunker codes made them laugh. I tried to make it lighthearted. I tried to make it like really easy to get into. Some people don't get the humor. I think people that know a little bit that are a little bit past beginner might not resonate with the book very much because it is very, 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 very beginner and entry level. And I guess if I had to have a hope, it would be that people don't read the book just to tater tots. Exactly. People don't read the book just to act like they know more than me. I know way more than what is in this book. I was just trying to write it so entry-level folks were not intimidated by it. So, yeah. Anyway, I feel like I kind of should have put the bunker codes thing at the beginning, because I feel like a lot of people are more interested right now in the bunker codes than they are in the fictional series. But the fictional series came first, and it kind of segued into the whole reason for bunker codes existing in the first place. So anyway, that is all. And bunker codes is like $20. And it's not in Kindle either because 99% of people wanted bunker codes in print. And I was just not going to risk this whole thing just getting immediately pirated, because it actually has like some hopes of actually being successful and really ending up in people's bunkers, which is what I want. Even if you already know everything, you buy the bunker and you throw it in the bunker book, throw it in your bunker and add some more notes in case somebody else finds your bunker someday. So anyway, I'm losing my voice because I've been talking for a long time, but I appreciate you all, and buy my books, and thanks everybody. I've been writing these for 6 years now, so really appreciate you all. I should write a Scooby snack section. I want to add more recipes. I want to add more recipes in the hardbound. Scooby snacks. Alright. I appreciate you all, and like, subscribe, and tell your friends, and buy my books, and don't get put off by my YouTube channel if you see video games, because it's... Some people watch the video games to relax, and some people listen to my voice to relax, so whatever. And I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye. Buy my books.